in science and math.
South Africa ranks among the top 10 African countries where human trafficking is at its worst. Figures in the first LexisNexis Human Trafficking and Awareness Index was released yesterday reveals that about 540 people are trafficked into and out of the country in the past 2 years. Lack of a centralized database of trafficked children is one of the problems hampering South African authorities. Matipa, the counter-trafficking coordinator with Annex, that is the activist networking against the exploitation of children, is with me. Matipa, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
How is this lack of a database causing a problem?
Well, as you know, the legislation against trafficking was passed in July this year. And so currently what we experienced is that service providers, NGOs, were collecting cases and assisting victims, and these cases weren't being forwarded through a central system. So therefore this led to evidence or stats in cases being very anecdotal. So for instance, one department would record a certain number of cases in the system and it wouldn't correspond with another. So from the side of social development, they would have their stats, side of home affairs or SAPs, they'd have different figures. So it wouldn't correspond. And this is because there wasn't legislation in place. And with the promulgation of legislation, we're hoping at least we can have a centralized data collection system. So at least when we know once the victim has been identified, up until the point that they have been repatriated, we can have more credible statistics in place.
Why is South Africa becoming a hub for traffickers?
I think the misconception is that trafficking is a recent phenomenon, that human trafficking is something that we heard about more during the 2010 World Cup. But in actual fact, it's been happening for decades. It's just been given this new term, and the operations have become more sophisticated. Research that was done by the International Organization of Migration highlighted that South Africa is a transit destination, a place of origin, as well as a final destination with regards to trafficking in persons. And we all know South Africa has porous borders. Our ports of entry are often used as a gateway for most African countries to abroad, whether it's to the east, to the west. So that is how it's become easier for traffickers to use South Africa as a transit destination. As a place of origin, trafficking has been happening, like I said, for decades. So historically, the Western Cape has been seen as a place where trafficking for domestic labor has been rife. So it's been happening, but it's been unreported, and not enough research has gone towards the extent of it. Also, trafficking for forced marriages. This is something that's also culturally tied. I don't want to call it a cultural practice because, there's a lot of controversy around that. But it's something that's been happening, and due to the nature of the fact that it's an origin point, a transit point, and also a final destination where even individuals are trafficked from Asia, specifically maybe to the Western Cape or the Gauteng province for sexual purposes, as they're seen as a more exotic type sex industry. Also maybe individuals from other African countries trafficked for labor as well as a final destination point.
Of course, the question is, how do we help now to stop this practice?
Well, there are various ways. I think firstly, awareness for the greater public. Awareness raising is the biggest thing that we need to do. There is a national toll-free helpline, which is 0800 555 999, and one can access information from there. We do have legislation in place, and for those who are aware of what it is, I'd urge them to go onto the Department of Justice site to read up on it. But also, we've got NGOs working on the issue, such as Annex. You've also got other NGOs and faith-based organizations. And also, for those role players who are involved, training is what is necessary, and not just training on what it is, but more specialized training with regards to victim identification, assistance, with regards to the trauma that the victim is experiencing, and various stages and steps that need to be followed with regards to victim assistance. And if that is done correctly, then we can see more convictions of this crime. We have the legislation in place. It's just about awareness now and how we can be made more aware of what's going on.
Matipa, very quickly, before you go, could you just repeat that number for us?
It's 0800 555 999. It's a toll-free number, and one can even just call in to find out more information about what human trafficking is, but most importantly, to report cases of that nature.
Matipa, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Matipa Mwamuka there from Annex, talking us through what to do if you suspect or know of human trafficking. Other news this afternoon, the United Nations says it will strengthen the presence of its troops along the DRC's borders.